Hello everyone, I'm Heather, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the 3 best and 3 worst things about our 2017 cruise on Disney Wonder. So if you've been following along with my channel for a while, I have been going back to my previous cruises from before I started my channel. I started my YouTube channel in 2018 to recap for you the cruises I took prior to starting my channel, sharing with you the details about the cruise and telling you the 3 best and 3 worst things about each of these cruises. This is an interesting one. If you watched the last video in this series, that was about our multi-generational cruise on the Disney Wonder in 2004. This next cruise shows that there was a big gap between cruises. So in those early times when I first started cruising, we went on a cruise in 2001, went on a cruise in 2002, went on a cruise in 2004, all relatively close together. And then there were 13 years before I took my next cruise. And there's 2 reasons for that. Well, there's actually 3 reasons for that. One, and this may be an issue for a lot of you. One was that was the season of raising young children. Okay, so we were in a season of our lives where we were raising young children. As I mentioned in our previous video in this series, in 2004 on that cruise, Megan was only a 5-month-old baby, and I had another baby after that. So that's an exhausting, busy time when you have young children in the home. The second factor that goes along with that was it would have been very expensive for the 5 of us to take a cruise. Just for my husband and me and 3 kids to take a cruise together. We didn't always have very much money. You know, money was kind of an ongoing struggle for us, and financially, I was a stay-at-home mom for basically that whole time. So we were living on just the one income from my husband's job, and you know, so money was tight and we really couldn't afford to do something like go on a cruise. In that period between 2004 and 2017, we did not travel much at all. And that kind of brings me to the third thing, which was that my husband was very much less enthusiastic about making travel a priority than I was. So I guess let me put it this way. It was much less of a priority to travel for him than it was for me. I loved travel. I had been traveling my whole life. He didn't travel much, you know, prior to meeting me. I don't think his family ever really took vacations or traveled at all when he was a kid. So it just wasn't a thing for him. And it was kind of funny because it was something he had really kind of missed out on. And so every trip he took with us, you know, from the time we were, you know, dating and engaged, and sometimes we went on trips with my dad and stuff, every single trip we took, he would say, "Oh my gosh, this is the best trip I've ever been on." He would be so excited and just think it was the greatest thing ever. We went on a bunch of land-based vacations. We went back out to Washington for his brother's wedding, and we went to Cannon Beach and stuff like that on kind of a vacation-y part of that trip. We went to Chicago one time, which he thought was really great. We went to Washington, D.C. on the train. We went to Boston. We flew to Boston one time when those were all before Ben was born. And then we went to Las Vegas when I was pregnant with Ben. And that was kind of interesting. The guys, my dad, my husband, and Andrew took the train. And Megan and I flew because I was pregnant. And we just thought it would be hard for me and her because she was pretty little to go on the train that far. So that was kind of interesting. And we did travel some. I have to say, I do know when it kind of dropped off. It was 2008. And it was coincided with 2 things: the recession, my husband lost his job, and having Ben, and now there were 5 of us. So just the combination of the economy kind of tanking and then having 5 of us between 2008 and my husband and I separated in 2011. And then our divorce wasn't final until 2013, but we were not together at that time. So we just didn't have the money or the means or whatever to do it. So that was why there was this big gap between cruises. So after we got divorced, I really kind of was like, I want to travel more. He didn't care about traveling, but this is really important to me. I want to travel with my kids. And so I made every effort, you know, started out slow, just little drive trips, you know, with my kids around Wisconsin or Minnesota. You know, we would go places, and gradually was building up to the point on my own where I could do things with the 3 kids by myself. And I remember the first trip I took that involved a flight with the 3 kids by myself was I flew them to California and we went to Disneyland in 2012. And that was a really big milestone for me as a mom and as a woman, that I can do this. I can travel with all 3 kids by myself. I mean, Ben was only 4 years old on that trip, and you know, I can manage this, I can make this happen. And so I want to encourage other single parents out there. If you feel like you can't travel alone with your kids, you can. You don't need to have a spouse. You don't need to have another adult with you. As long as you're making good choices and doing the right things with your kids to make it a, you know, make them good travelers, train them up to be good travelers, you really shouldn't have any problem. And then the secondary thing is you got to learn how to save up money and budget and stuff like that. Longer term, the better is what I found. Like, so for me, having trips booked out as far as possible is the best thing, because that gives me that much longer to look for deals, but also to save up the money. So it's really hard as a single parent to book last minute trips because you just don't have a pile of money sitting there. I had been trying to take my kids on a Disney cruise with all 3 of my kids because Ben hadn't been on a cruise yet at all. Megan did not remember our previous cruise on Disney Wonder in 2004 because she was an infant. And it was even kind of foggy for Andrew because he had, you know, he'd been 4 years old on our first cruise. He was 7 years old on our second cruise, you know, so he didn't even remember. And I had been trying for years, I think like 5 years, I was trying to get a Disney cruise booked where I could take all 3 kids. And it was a struggle. It was always one of 2 things. I couldn't get together enough money to pay it off in time, or I couldn't fit it in our schedule. And the kids being busy with school, and especially Andrew, because he was a teenager by then, and he was, you know, involved in a lot of things. He played on the soccer team, and he played in the tennis team, and he was always in school plays, and he was in the orchestra, and, you know, he was just involved in a lot of things. And so it was difficult to find times where we could all go. And then by the time we went on this cruise, Andrew was in college. So this was actually spring break of his sophomore year of college. Megan is a sophomore in college right now. We went on a trip last year when she was a freshman, and she asked me specifically this year when she's a sophomore, she does not want to go on a trip for her spring break because at that time she just really wanted to come home and get some rest. And so we already have planned for this year for spring break. The kids' breaks are different. Ben's spring break from high school is a different week than Megan's spring break from college. And so Ben and I are going to go on a cruise for his spring break this year, but when Megan's spring break is, she's just going to come home. So it gets challenging, especially when you have kids in different levels of schooling, especially if they're at different schools. And like now I've got one in law school, one in college, one in high school. None of them have the same breaks, you know, so it really gets challenging as your kids get older and get more involved in things to be able to schedule things where everybody can go. Okay, so I was just like so happy that I got this cruise booked. Finally could take my kids, all 3 of us, on a Disney cruise. This was another 4-night Bahamas cruise. This was basically the identical cruise to the one prior that we had done. 2004, we had done a 4-night Bahamas cruise on the Disney Wonder. 2017, we did a 4-night Bahamas cruise on the Disney Wonder. Again, we went out of Port Canaveral, and it was a 4-night, and I'm sure it was exactly the same. 1 sea day, 1 stop in Nassau. We did not get off the ship, and 1 stop in Castaway Cay. We did get off. We did the bikes, and the kids, Megan and Andrew, tried to snorkel, but the ocean was too cold. It was freezing, and they couldn't stand it. And so snorkeling was kind of a bust. And Ben and I did take out one of those pedal boats, you know, where you pedal it. We did go out in one of those. So we still had a fun day, but just so you know, in March, the water is not very warm in the Bahamas if you plan on swimming or going snorkeling. And on this cruise, because I kept having to change it, we had an inside stateroom, and it was one of the ones that's turned sideways. If you look at the deck plans on the Disney ships, sometimes there's sideways inside staterooms, and I found that actually turned out to make it feel more spacious. And I've had other people say this too. So if you can ever score one of those inside staterooms that's turned sideways, get it, because I like them better, the layout of it, and it just feels like it has more space somehow. Inside staterooms are great for sleeping. They're also very quiet. They're dark and they're quiet. But if you're claustrophobic like I am, I don't want to get it again unless I absolutely have to. Our stateroom attendant on that cruise did point out that an inside stateroom is a great option if you otherwise wouldn't be able to afford to go on that cruise. It can really save you a lot of money. And if you do a guaranteed inside, that'll really save you a lot of money. Our dining on this cruise, we actually got our own table. It was just the 4 of us at a table, and our first night of dining, we were in Tiana's place. Tiana's place was new to the ship since the last time we had been on it. It replaced, was it Parrot Key on the Wonder too? I'm not even sure. I don't know what that restaurant was before they turned it into Tiana's place. Here's the 3 best things about this cruise. Number 1 was that I finally got to go on a Disney cruise with all 3 of my kids. I was just so happy and so excited that I finally got to go on a Disney cruise with all 3 of my kids. I'd been trying and trying and trying for, like I said, for like 5 years. And so I was just very happy about that. I mean, this was probably all me. I mean, I'm sure they were enjoying themselves too, but I was just so incredibly happy that I finally had gotten to go with all 3 of us. I had originally intended it to be a combination Disney World and Disney Cruise, but I couldn't afford that, and it ended up being just the Disney Cruise, and my mom had to help us out as a Christmas present with the money for the plane tickets, but we did get to go, and I was very happy that we finally did get to go. So that was the first best thing. Okay, the second best thing was I really enjoyed biking on Castaway Cay. If you saw my previous video where I talked about something I was not happy about on Castaway Cay with my husband on the previous cruise, this was just so enjoyable. We each had our own bike. Everybody knew how to ride a bike. There was no baby on the back of the bike this time. It was each of us riding our own individual bikes. And Disney has this really cool route all mapped out for you. It's actually kind of a one-way thing. And you bike out to this lookout tower, and then you can go up on the lookout tower and you get really cool views of the ship and the whole island and everything. And you go out to this other point way out on the end, and there's really beautiful views of the ocean. It's a really great photo spot, and I just thought that was so much fun. A couple of the kids were like, I don't want to bike, or it's too far, or whatever, but I had a lot of fun. I thought biking on Castaway Cay was really fun. And if you're not so much into water stuff, that's a great option for you. And you do have plenty of time that you can do biking and water stuff if you want. So biking on Castaway Cay on this cruise was one of the best things about it. Okay, and then the third thing, this was really cool, and this is something you need to know if you ever are cruising on Disney Cruise Line. We were on the ship for the world premiere of the live-action Disney's Beauty and the Beast movie, the one with Emma Watson as Belle. If you are ever on a Disney cruise on the day that a movie of Disney's is released in theaters, don't worry, you still get to see it the day it's released, because they release it on the ship on the same day. So any movie of Disney's that is getting released in the theater is released on the ships on the same days. I don't know about, like, it's a good question. If anybody knows this, let me know in the comments. If it was something that they released straight to Disney Plus, would it also release on the ship on the same day? I'm thinking of like Mulan that happened with, and Soul, but one or two of those might have also been during the worldwide cruise shutdown, so it may have been irrelevant, but I don't know. But just know that you're not going to miss a movie premiere because you're on a Disney cruise, because they premiered on the ship too. Now, knowing that pretty much everybody on the ship wanted to see this movie when it first came out, they showed it 2 or 3 times in the big Walt Disney Theater. So that was actually the main show of the night that night. The day that it premiered, that was the main Walt Disney Theater show for the night. And it was packed. Everybody went to that movie. And then the cool thing was, I want to say it was like the first night of the cruise. Might have been the first or second night of the cruise. The cool thing was, we still got to go to it again. We got to see it again in the Buena Vista Cinema the regular movie theater on a different night of the cruise, or a different day. I think it was probably our sea day, or maybe the day we were in Nassau because we didn't get off the ship. So know that not only do you not miss the premieres of Disney films if you're on a Disney cruise, because they show them there too, but you have plenty of opportunity, which I showed on our last couple Disney cruises. I showed that in the vlogs. There's multiple times that you can go to each movie. They show them repeatedly. So however it best fits into your schedule. That's something I love, going to the movies. I do not like watching movies at home. I only like watching them in the theater. I know I'm weird, but I just really love seeing movies in the theater. And so it is a super big treat for me. That is one of the things I really love about Disney Cruise Line, is that they make it a priority to have a cinema, a dedicated cinema or two, and show movies, first run, new release movies on their ships. I think that's great. So that was really cool that we got to do that. That's the only time I think that we were on a ship for the premiere, like the day it was released. But they're always released on the day they're released in theaters, they're released on the ships too. So just be aware of that. Then the 3 worst things about this cruise. Number 1 was how the water was too cold. So that was a disappointment for my kids. They had really wanted to swim in the ocean, and they had wanted to go snorkeling. And it was like Lake Superior freezing cold, which they're very used to. So it was really just too, I mean, Andrew went in and he had to immediately get out. He said it hurt to breathe. It was just so cold. So be aware of that. In the winter, in the Bahamas, even though it's the Bahamas, the water might be too cold for you to swim in the ocean. I don't know when that starts. See, like on that previous cruise when we were there in November, I feel like it was still pretty warm. But maybe, you know, that's left over from summer or whatever. Does anybody know, when does the water start to get cold? I don't think it's probably the same thing when you get down into the actual Caribbean, because you're closer to the equator, but the Bahamas, it can get cold. So it's really, you know, east of Florida. Probably Bermuda, same thing, because that's even farther north. But does anybody know, like, December, is the water too cold to swim in the Bahamas at Castaway Cay or any of the cruise line's private islands? So that's just something to be aware of. If you're there in the winter, you know, January, February, March, it's probably going to be too cold to swim unless you have like a wetsuit or something. Okay, second thing was that because I was changing around things so much, and because I wasn't sure if we were actually going to get to go, my actual booking that we actually cruised on was actually a very last minute booking. And we got one of the last cabins on the ship, and it was that inside cabin. It was also a standard inside stateroom, which meant it did not have the split bathroom that Disney Cruise Line is so famous for. So be aware of that. That's the only type of room on a Disney Cruise Line ship that does not have the split bathroom. It's the lowest price category they offer. It's that standard inside stateroom. So just know that if you want to go really cheap as you can, that's the room you're going to want to go for. But know that you will only have one bathroom. Now, that's not different than any other ship out there. So, you know, I mean, it really was no big deal. And that's why Megan didn't remember when we went on Disney Magic in March this past time. She didn't remember the split bathroom because she didn't have a split bathroom on the last cruise that she was old enough to remember. So that was a little bit of a bummer that we only had the one bathroom, although it was not a problem, and that we didn't have a window, a porthole, or a balcony. But it was not the end of the world. And then the third worst thing, and this isn't a problem anymore, and I'm sure it's just because we've aged and matured, but we were kind of picky with the food. And actually, the people I remember that were pickiest with the food, I think it was me and it was Megan. And we're definitely not like that anymore. We're very adventurous and like to try new things with our food. But it's also possible that Disney Cruise Line has changed the menu a little bit since then. I mean, this was 6-7 years ago. And I think I also just made bad decisions with my ordering. I just don't think I ordered what I should have. And I kept having to send things back. And like, I remember one night I didn't like anything on the menu. And so I didn't know what to have them do and stuff like that. And, you know, they very, very much want to make sure that you're happy on Disney Cruise Line. They very much care about guest satisfaction. They really want to, if you don't like something, what can we do? How can we fix it? You know, what can I bring you instead? You know, and they will bring you whatever. And I guess I had done it so many times that the chef came out to talk to me and ask what was wrong. And he's like, was there anything wrong? Don't get me wrong. There was absolutely nothing wrong with the quality of the food. The food is beautiful and wonderful, and they do a great job. I just ordered the wrong things, or there wasn't anything that at that particular time in my life I liked. Whatever, it was me. The problem was me. The only thing I do remember that I said to the chef, because I reassured him, I said, no, it's not, there's nothing wrong with the food, it's just me, I'm picky, is I did suggest to him, it would really be nice if you had more vegetarian offerings, because they really did give you a lot of meat, and like the meat would be really big, and that's just, I'm not big on that. I don't know if it's still that way, but it was at the time. And he took that to heart. You know, he's like, okay, that's good to know. Thank you. We will definitely consider that for the future, you know. And I do think they do have more vegetarian stuff now. So whether it was just me or, you know, a bunch of people said that. And I have found, like on our Disney Wonder cruise that Ben and I took in 2022 and on our Magic cruise, if I ordered one of the vegetarian options, I was always very happy with it. I don't remember ever being displeased with the vegetarian options. They tend to be some of my favorite dishes on Disney Cruise Line. So, you know, I mean, it was a negative at the time, and I was a little embarrassed, like that the chef came out to talk to me to find out what's the matter, you know. But I was also appreciative that he did that because he cared and wanted to know what was up with the food and what would I suggest they do differently. And apparently took my suggestion to heart, you know. So that was one of the worst things, but not really that big a deal. So Disney Cruise Line is also, and so are the parks, very, very good about food allergies. If you have a food allergy, you let them know because they are very careful and very good. If you have a child with a food allergy, they always have options for you with food allergies, and they're very careful about it and everything. So if you have a special dietary need or a food allergy, I really highly recommend going on a cruise on Disney Cruise Line or going to the Disney theme parks because they take that very seriously, and it's a good place to be if that's a concern to you. So, and at the Disney theme parks, you can also bring in your own food. A lot of people don't know that, but you are totally welcome to bring in a cooler with all your own food if you don't want to buy the food in the parks. So that's an easy way to get around that too. Okay, so there you go. That was our 3 best and 3 worst things from our Disney cruise on Disney Wonder. The first cruise we went on after a 13-year break. And it was me and my 3 kids, my first time taking all 3 of my kids as a solo mom, just me and my 3 kids. And ever since then, except for our last cruise to Alaska where my dad went with us, that's what it's been. It's been me and my kids. But actually, this was the last cruise I took with Andrew until our cruise to Alaska this past May, because Andrew could never go with us again because of that scheduling thing, or he was always busy. So I went on 5 cruises without Andrew between this one and our cruise to Alaska in May of 2023. So where it was just me, and one time it was just me and Ben, and then otherwise it was me and Megan and Ben. So it gets tough when your kids get older. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you found it helpful and informative, and it gave you some information that you needed. If you liked it at all, please be sure to give me a thumbs up down below. And if you want to make sure you don't miss the last 2 videos that I'm making in this series coming up, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss getting notified of each of my new videos when they come out. Have a great day, everyone, and safe travels.